take it or leave it. That's me. Like I'm unapologetically myself, and and if that's not good enough, then that's fine. And if that doesn't align with someone else's values, that's also fine. Like we're all different. And I think young people these days, there's just so much pressure to be a certain way, social media and high performance, the expectations are so high that it's hard to just be. It's hard to figure out who you are because you're getting pulled in so many directions. To be successful, you need to first figure out your baseline and who you are as a person and who you want to be.
Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside podcast. I'm your host, Chris Turkington. And before we crack into it, I want to give a shout out to our mates at Dark Horse Coffee. Thanks very much for supporting the show. On the show today, we've got Dane Cleaver. Dane is a professional cricketer for the Central District Stags. So, Dane, it's cool to have you on, bro, and I've been looking forward to having a chat with you.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Good. Let's crack into it. So, what does elite sport teach you about performing when you don't feel confident?
I think the biggest thing is that there's no hiding from the fact that performance is the currency. When you're a professional sport, when you're, playing on a Saturday and having run around with your mates, there's no real pressure to, like, if you don't score runs, you still have a beer after. And whereas I suppose in the professional environment, that your performance is your currency. It's what reflects on whether you're going to keep getting contracts, whether you're going to play the next game, whether you're going to, be seen by your peers or higher honors, as successful. So there's no hiding from it. And I think the biggest thing is that it's a lie to say that you're always confident. You half the time, more than half the time, you're not confident. And then it's just about, it just teaches you that you have to find a way. So whether that's, looking within yourself, whether it's your training, your preparation, whatever it is, it just makes you hyper aware of the fact that performance is your currency. So it doesn't matter how you wake up that day, how you're feeling, that you have to, you have to get the business done and you have to figure out ways to do that.
Yeah. And what have you figured out, man? Like, I love that performance is the currency, and that makes total sense when that's what you're getting paid to do, is to front up. When things haven't gone well or when the performance hasn't been there, how have you sort of continued to stay positive and made sure that you kept your intensity up and doing the things that you needed to do? Like, can you talk us through what you've sort of learned in that department?
I'll let you know when I figure that one out. But no, I think like over the years, it hasn't always been something that's come naturally. Like I've definitely had to work on it a lot. And I think even now you're constantly learning, as you go through sort of form slumps or, these days things happening at home or, in your personal life around the world, everything does affect you. And so it's not right to sort of pretend like it doesn't. But, for me, I think it's focusing on those things you can control. Focusing on those habits. I like to personally, I call them 1%ers. So for me, the things that are important are, making sure that my family, my home life sorted, my sleep, my nutrition, my preparation. So that comes to not only preparation in terms of training, physical, mental, tactical, you're making sure that you're doing your scouting and preparation for the actual game. But it's just making sure that those sort of 1%ers are constantly front of mind and that your habits are built around making sure that they are consistent as possible, especially if you have a hard time. You've got either a frantic mind or a frantic life or a mixture of both. And that becomes, something that's not always easy to do.
Yeah, for sure. I'm reasonably familiar with cricket, played a little bit, obviously not as well as you, but it's just such a fickle game, and you spend a lot of your time failing, particularly as a batsman and as a wicketkeeper batsman. It's brutal, man. Like, you get one good ball or whatever it might be, and it's all over for you. And a lot of the time that can be completely out of your control. Is that what you've found? It's a very stoic principle, isn't it, around focusing on what you can control and just accepting that the rest it'll be what it's going to be, like being very process orientated. Within your process, what have you found to be effective? So you mentioned diet, sleep, making sure that your work habit and stuff is there and that your family are top of mind and they're taken care of. But what else have you found to be effective with that sort of process mindset?
Yeah, I mean, You nailed it, really. Like that process, we talk about that a lot, right? And like from a mental skills perspective, that's seen as sort of the key pillar of, sports psychology is, can you stay in the moment and stay process focused and not, get sucked into outcomes. But like you said in cricket, where everything is an outcome and there's so many variables that are outside of your control that affect the outcome, it does become very hard to do that. For me, I think there's a couple of things because it's easy to process, right? It's
Yeah.
like, we talk about that around, words and but what does it actually mean to you? And I suppose to your question, for me, it's about reviewing. So making sure that after the game, you can reflect and say, you know, what happened today? Did I get a good ball? What was my mindset like? Was I present and, adjusting to conditions and the bowlers and the tactical element of the game? Or did I get caught up with my ego or did the situation, the outcome of the game, take over and control how I was playing? Or did I just get a good ball? Or did I just make a bad decision? Because those things happen, as you said, regularly. So if you can sort of reflect and review, because there is so much detail in cricket, is can you reflect and review, and that gives you a bit better idea of were you being process, were you being process orientated, or for me, like what are the things consistently catching you out, as an ego, as a getting ahead of yourself, like once you're in, then all of a sudden the process goes out the window and you're like, the ego takes over. So it's like just reviewing and reflecting. And then to your process, 1% is like, for me, I know that, if I'm not sleeping, I'm grumpy, my concentration's not as good, and I'm more likely to go into that ego frame of mind rather than, you know, sticking to the process that I've laid out. So those things
Yeah.
are particularly important.
Decision making goes out the window too when you're fatigued. Like we've all been there. We've got young families, man. We're just walking it right now. But yeah, like everything's harder when you're tired. It's a it's an interrogation technique in the military for a reason, right? They keep you awake for prolonged periods of time because it breaks down your willingness to resist and all of the things you discussed. Being sleep deprived is tough, man. It's a torture technique for a reason. It's certainly not conducive to high performance. But so you would go through this intentional reflection piece after each performance, after each innings. You'd sit down at any given time and reflect on the things that you could control and the things that were maybe outside of your control. Was that a natural thing to you? Like, were you doing that at a young age, or was that taught to you within the high performance sphere?
Nah, that was definitely taught to me. And I think a key pillar in that is that you need someone that you trust and someone that understands your process to be able to reflect to, because it can be quite a hard thing to do yourself. Like we all like to think, we're super objective and super introspective, but I think in
We're
reality,
not.
we're never quite as good as we think we are. So I think you need someone that's not only willing to call you out if you're bullshitting, but also just to sort of know, the things, the things that you're trying to really reflect on to see if that, those move the needle. If you're able to have someone that can sort of pick up on those and review, it is helpful. Especially, I think my personality, as you'll probably find out in the next half an hour, I like to verbalize. I'm not very introspective in my thinking, so I like to figure things out while I'm talking.
Yeah, loves a yarn. Yeah, I know you from a previous life, mate. And I know you love a yarn. That's one of the best things about you. But okay, and I totally agree with what you said. Like, you need someone that can call you on your bullshit because we tell ourselves a lot of good stories and we have a habit of explaining things away instead of taking ownership. That's the human condition. And you might say, "Oh, I got a good balls," and this person you trust, a coach, a mentor, a mate, whatever, they're like, bullshit. You had a wild swing at a wild delivery. There was.
Yeah,
I think you need to reassess that you got a good ball. Yeah,
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 exactly.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really curious around part of that reflection piece. What did you find for you? Like, were there common denominators there where you were coming unstuck, or was it a lot of different things that sort of were you seeing patterns as part of that reflection process? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, once you take the time to drill into your own game, then it's sort of like, what are the things that you're working on to prepare? And then the art of performance is, can you bring those to the game, right? So it's like, can you
Yes,
get
yeah,
yourself in a headspace where, you've done all this hard work, you've done all this preparation, be it physical, tactical, mental, whatever. And then can you bring that to the game? So when you reflect back, rather than, starting with the outcome being like, oh, I got X amount of runs, you actually go all the way back. I like to circle back to the preparation and then say, okay, I worked, I dialed into my pull shot because I knew they were going to come short ball plan. I knew the pitch was green. So I was trying to leave on length. Did I do that well? And if I did, then that enough to be like, okay, I just got a good ball. He bowled me a good ball, or I got run out. I don't know the situation, but like, rather than starting with, oh, I got 32 runs, oh, it's a failure, because that's what most people do, right? And because,
yeah,
performance is currency, we are sort of often run and drilled into us that stats are really important. But to me, it's like, well, stats are important in terms of, they convey a message around your performance and currency. But at the same time, there's no real context involved in statistics. Yeah, you don't know if you needed 10 and over for the last 6 overs and you went out there and strike at 200, but you only got 10, but it might have helped the team win the game. So
yeah.
I think, yeah, just that feedback loop back to your preparation, and then having an honest look at the variables around, the things that you can't control, and say, well, I'll leave those lie because I can't control them. And then from that feedback loop, then the next time your preparation, you might take something from that you've learned into your preparation next time and try and be as consistent as you can with that. Because if you're consistent with that, then you're more likely to be consistent with your outcome. That's just,
Yeah, I love that. And it's like defining what success looks like, and you're benchmarking yourself against your plans as opposed to what happens as a result of your plans. You're like, yeah, I only made 10 runs, but I did exactly what I was going to do. That's a success. You've executed that plan as you wanted to. That's a great day out. Whereas you could probably make 80 runs and be sloppy in your plans and get a little bit lucky. And that might be termed a failure. Like, yeah, being really, really clear on what success looks like for you.
yeah. No, that you've just nailed it. And I think, like, with the invention of 2020 cricket and the prevalence of that in terms of importance in the cricketing landscape, is like, the shorter the format, the more outcome pressure there is, and the harder it is to stay process orientated. So, like, for me, 2020 cricket, when you're reviewing, like, the runs are almost like irrelevant. It's like, was it a good option on that pitch to that bowler? And had you prepared well enough to take that option? And if all those things, if yes, the reverse sweep was in my game plan to that bowler, the pitch was conducive, the field was conducive, I just missed it and got LBW, then it's like, okay, well, that's not a failure. You might have got a duck, but it might have been first ball. But, when I went out, when I set my game plan and my methodology to how I was going to approach that, that was in it. If I got out in the middle and I froze and first ball I tried to block and got bowled through the gate, then that's a different story, because you're not bringing the confidence in your preparation and your methodology to be successful if you're getting out like that versus the first example.
Yeah, I love that. And a lot of similarities there with high performance teams that we see and work with and special operations communities and stuff. They put so much effort and diligence into that planning phase and making sure all the controllables are controlled, and their tools are just second nature. They don't have to dedicate any bandwidth to it. Like, that rifle is just an extension of their arm because they want all of that shit on autopilot. So when they go into a life or death situation, they can just focus on what's in front of them, man. All that stuff's taken care of, and they're just in the flow state, reacting to whatever comes their way. And it sounds really similar in your context as well, around you've done absolutely everything you can to make sure the controllables are controlled. So when you step out on that pitch, you can just trust that you've done the work and react to what's in front of you and trying to stay present in the game situation. Does that sound about right?
That sounds like the goal state. Yeah, whether I actually ever get there is a different story, but it sounds perfect. If I could get there a few times this season, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, and how do you like? You're a human, man. We all are, and we struggle to stay present, and pressure gets to all of us in some way, shape, or form. You're a liar if you say it doesn't. But how did you try and keep yourself really present and mindful in those pressure cooker moments? Because I'm going to say you've had a lot of them. Hey, what's up, guys? Just a quick note to say, hopefully you're enjoying the show. If you are, feel free to like and subscribe, and you can share it with your mates. You can also find us at LinkedIn and on Facebook, or check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz. Cool, that's all from me. Let's get back to the show. How have you stayed grounded in those moments?
Yeah, I think the reviewing and the preparation part are super important. But yeah, once you're actually in that moment, those things aren't, they're before and after. They're not in the moment. So, in the moment, there's a couple of things that I've worked on quite a lot that I think have contributed to my success in the last few years compared to when I was a bit younger. And that is definitely around breathing. I used to, in those moments, I didn't think I did, but I used to tense up. And like, I'd say if we were talking like fight, flight, freeze, it would be, I was more on the freeze. I didn't think I was, and I felt like I was all good, but like reflecting back now and like in those moments, and that's usually seen in like in the bat and my stance. For non-cricketing people, it's obviously not that exciting, but so I used to get really tense in those moments, and then I found it really hard to play the ball on its merits and to be natural and to do all the things you need to be able to do to be successful. So I worked a lot on like trying to breathe, step away, have a bit of a pre-ball routine, breathe, really ground my feet into the floor, and then more recent times, I've really tried to focus on having really relaxed arms. And so a bit of like the physical stuff, a bit of like sort of just physically bringing yourself back into the present, into the moment, especially when you know that your mind's sort of getting either freezing or getting further into the future than you need to be.
I like that a lot. So your sort of trigger or your feeling was tension. You feel tension, so that's your trigger to step away from the moment and regulate yourself. And you spoke about breathing, so you like to slow down your breathing to bring on
Yeah.
that parasympathetic response, and then some type of anchoring. So for you, it was smashing your feet into the ground or whatever you could do to get yourself right in that moment, and then that feel of coming back nice and relaxed, and it allows you to react to the ball that's coming down at you. That was something that you've really tried to get reps in around?
Yeah, and then smiling as well. I think like
Yeah, yeah.
for me, like that's quite a natural thing, like smiling, and I think there is research around how that relates to your nervous system and in those moments in sport. If you can smile, like so, even as a team, we talk about it in those big games, finals, and big pressure games like can we or must win games. We actually have that as like in 2020 cricket, especially, we've had that as a bit of a mantra over the last couple of years is, like you're here to entertain, you're here to enjoy, like if you're here to enjoy it, like you're not just playing because you don't, like, because it sucks. Like so then if you can actually show that and then hopefully get a bit of that nervous response as well, then that can contribute to, yeah, just being able to stay calm and react accordingly rather than getting into those, fight, flight, freeze reactions.
That's so good, and, like, there's a lot of similarities there. I've started playing golf now for my sins, so gave up the great game of cricket a little while ago, got too old and too broken. But yeah, like most reformed cricketers, into the golf realm now and having a hack on a Sunday. But I find that with driver, I get too tense with the driver in my hands, similar to your batting. So I go through something quite similar to make sure I'm really nice and relaxed so I can fully commit to the swing. And then the smiling thing, I do that when I'm over pressure putts. So I've had started playing into club and match play and stuff, and I've had a couple of matches where it was coming down to the wire and putts to sort of win the match type thing. And that's what I've instinctively started doing, is looking down at the ball and just before I putt the ball, just smiling. And like, you're like, oh, it warms you up and relaxes you, eh? Like it actually does.
Yeah. I like the idea of like, why do we play sport? Like, especially professional sport is like, you want to be in those moments. Like for me, I
Yeah.
love those moments. Like when you think back on your career, like it's the ones you remember. The actual cricketing moments you remember are pretty much all those high pressure, like really tense moments. Whether you've performed or not, they stick with you. everything else sort of falls away. The only really things that stick with you are your relationships and the people that you've, created these amazing relationships with through sport. And then those few moments where it really feels like it's life or death, I feel a bit funny saying that after some of your other guests' actual life and death, but it feels like that in the moment. And so, yeah, it's funny that you say that. But I think of like, is it Damien McKenzie? He from the All Blacks when he goal kicks, he looks up and does that little smile. And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, 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 yeah.
it's the same principles, right? Like it's relaxing you. It's, he's probably visualizing either the ball going over or something completely different that calms him and, keeps him in the moment. So I think, yeah,
Just
those sort of things, like, yeah, I definitely have taken a lot of years to learn them and put them into practice, probably longer than I would have liked. And you see some of the young guys coming through now and really taking time to work on their mental skills and get to know themselves a bit better. And I think you see their development so much quicker, which is cool.
yeah. And we've been very fortunate in this world to meet some incredible people. And Mark Zimmerman was one of those. He's a very well-renowned mental skills coach in the rugby union world, and you might have heard the name. But yeah, like the up here is the unlock because everybody's so optimized for nutrition. All their tactics, strategies, their conditioning, like at that top tier level, everyone's optimized for that. And it's the people that can optimize for this that are often the difference, and how they deal with key moments and how well they regulate themselves when the crunch comes on. Like the story they're telling themselves, that's the difference maker.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's amazing that. Yeah, that's such a well-known fact, but then it's still so hard to sell that to people, like even athletes, like it's definitely a lot more evolved, and the stigma and the thinking around that is so much more researched and accepted now than it was 15 years ago when I started playing, 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I started playing professional cricket. Like it was a completely different environment and no one talked about any of that stuff. But now it's just part of, a high performance environment because it's like anything. It's another thing thrown in the pot, another, important skill, just like your batting or your bowling or your wicket keeping, your S&C. It just has to be there. Otherwise you're just going to get left behind. So,
Yeah. I want to talk to you about failure, man. Like cricket, I think, is a game you spend a lot of your time failing, whatever that looks like, maybe from an outcomes perspective. Business, life, the real world, the people that are successful generally have just failed way more, and they've been able to learn and persevere through that over and over and over again, and not have people cheering their name and patting them on the back as they do it, and just that internal fire to do it. But how have you kept that internal fire going, man? Because like any pro athlete, you would have faced your fair share of failures, disappointments, not getting picked for teams you want to be in, all those types of things. How do you keep turning up and grinding, even in the face of all that sort of stuff?
yeah, it's a great question.
Because it's hard, man. Like if anyone tells you that that's easy, maybe they're David Goggins, but I think it's bullshit. Like
Yeah.
failure sucks, and not getting where you want to go is shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's taken me a long time to actually get to a point where I now can look back and say, like, yeah, I have been resilient. Like, I have gone through a lot, and not necessarily from a life perspective, but from a sporting perspective. It's like you do have to make sacrifices, and you get knocked down a lot, and you don't make teams, and there's all this sort of stuff, and it is hard, and never really gets easier. It's always hard, but I like to say, like, there's no successful people that fail and then give up, right? Like no one becomes successful at anything, like you have to keep picking yourself up and you have to keep going. And sometimes that's harder than others. Like sometimes it's, you need a bit of external motivation or intrinsic motivation, or that internal drive just seems to elude you, and sometimes you just you have to find goals, and you have to find things in the distance to keep chasing. But yeah, for me, like, I've always loved the game. I've always loved the game. I've loved the team environment, loved like teammates and doing it together. it's a weird, like, sort of individual game within a team game, but I've always really enjoyed the team. The individual stuff has been sort of part and parcel of loving the game and being driven to be successful and be the best I can, really. Like these days, I genuinely just think like if I can just get 1% better every day, that I'll get to those goals and those outcomes that you want. Rather than, yeah, I guess like when you're younger, it's like, I want to play for Black Caps. It's like, well, yeah, I still want to play with Black Caps, but I'm only going to do that if I'm doing all these things we've talked about already, day in, day out, right?
Yeah. And is that like a big driver for you? Like, I've been in teams with you. You are a good team, man. I can categorically say that. Is that kind of a big feeling of responsibility and obligation for you? Like you don't want to let the lads down around you, and you want to make sure when you turn up that you're doing whatever you can to help that waka move faster. Do you feel obligation there? And the reason I ask that is talk to a lot of high performers, and there's one that's burned into my brain. Mark Doreen. He was an ex Australian SAS operator, and he literally got blown up by an IED on an operation. An IED is a bomb, for those that don't know what that is. And he got back to active duty, I think it was within 6 months. And his motivator to get back was he didn't want to let his mates down. That was the kicker. So, like, can you talk to that a little bit, maybe through your lens or from your perspective?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've grown into over time. Like, I suppose one day I looked around and I was like, oh shit, I'm not the young buck anymore. And then I suppose with that came a sense of, okay, I've had all these experience from a team perspective, and now I have a pretty good idea of what I don't want to be like as a teammate and as a leader in a team. And then I have a fair idea of some of the things that if I was back where I was that I would have appreciated. So then I suppose a bit of the drive there is just around wanting to leave the team in a better place, like wanting to be a giver, not a taker, someone who like turns up and wants to perform and wants to get better as an individual, but also as someone who wants to be a leader and give to the team, wants to sort of mentor the younger guys, create an environment as a team environment where people feel safe and feel like they can express themselves and be themselves. Because that's one of the biggest things. You get so many different personalities in a team. You think of a squad of 20, like you could have, you know, 10, 15 completely different people, like, well, you have 20 different people, but you know what I mean? Like you can have a seriously large range of personalities. So creating an environment where people feel like they can be themselves, and as someone who is a bit more out there and a bit more expressive and a bit more sort of extroverted, like, I would have like always would have appreciated that. Like I think back to our days in Freiburg, I got that there and I absolutely loved every minute of it. And I think now that's what I want to be able to provide is these guys are stepping into a professional space. So there is a level of performance, like we've talked about, and expectations that come with being a professional sportsman. But at the same time, like there are things that we can do as leaders and as management and as a team to create an environment where people feel like they can be themselves and express themselves, and a learning environment where, you know, these things we've talked about around process and high performance can be reality and not just things that we've talked about.
Yeah. And when you were that new lad, Dane, coming on the scene in the Stags or wherever it might be, what did the best leaders look like? What were they doing? What made them good leaders in your eyes? And what did they teach you that sort of stuck with you through your playing career so far?
Yeah, I think like there's different types of leaders, right? Like, and you know a lot more than me, but in the cricket environment, you sort of have the tactical leaders. Like, there's some guys that I think back and I was like, wow, that like their experience was amazing. The way they saw the game and like the way they use their experience to sort of impact the game, like tactically. But then I suppose on the other hand, you have sort of the people that might not have been the best players, but like a couple of them come to mind, and like they might not have been like the Black Caps, but they were the people that they were turning up, grinding day in day out. They were the ones that would go and have a coffee with you, even though you're this 18-year-old guy, and like they don't know from a bar of soap, and they've got their families and their career transitions and their lives going on, that as an 18-year-old I was like, I don't know what's happening in their lives, but I'm just worried about me. But now that I'm in that space, is like, yeah, there's a lot going on, and then you've still got to find the, so I really respect that, looking back, those people that were able to give you a bit of time and try and create an environment for you to be successful, considering everything else that they had on, is like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We see that a lot, and, worked with a lot of leaders through the years. And that seems to be what lands with people is when we say, oh, think back to people that have had a really positive influence on you in a leadership perspective. It doesn't often come up that they're like, oh, they were really good at their job, or in this case,
Yeah,
yeah, they're
yeah,
really awesome cricketers. Like, that's not, that technical competence is not the stuff that lands with people. It's, oh, they treated me with a lot of respect, or,
yeah,
they
yeah,
were always there to listen, or I trusted them a lot, or, it's
yeah,
the way they managed themselves. So the intrapersonal skills, the way they manage themselves, and then the interpersonal skills around how they relate to others. That is always what people remember. It's not, oh, they were an amazing boss. Like, well, if we dial down, oh, well, why is that? It's because they actually gave a fuck, like about me. Yeah, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
You've just,
yeah.
yeah, you've just nailed it there, mate. And it's probably one of those things that when you're younger, and like, if you, I think back to school, even, like, it's all about like, oh, he's the best player, or, he's the most talented, or he's the oldest, or he's the biggest, or, it's all these like factors that don't, like, yeah, they don't really matter. Like, and now, like, being at the back half of my career, like, the other sort of things now that I think, like, yeah, I still want to be the best player I can be, and I still want to, you know, perform highly, but like, those things are more important to me. Like, the way I go about it, being authentic to myself and doing things in a way that in 10 years' time, people that played with me will go, oh, Dane was a good team man. He was a good, he was a nice guy. He always had time for me. He always was willing to give me some advice. Those things are almost more important, like, your ego always wants to be the best player and, score the most runs and, all these outcome stuff. But when you actually take a bit of time, it's all those things you just mentioned, the other things that really, really become important.
That's wisdom around as you get older and time moves, and you realize what's actually important. It's legacy. When it's all said and done, like, what are these people going to say about me? And you want to feel like that your time mattered, and you made a positive difference to the people around you.
Yeah, well said, mate.
That's it. All right. So let's say you've got 5 minutes with a new person. Maybe they're going to be a professional cricketer in the CD Stags, or maybe they're going to be going into finance or some type of corporate career. It's a high pressure type gig. You got 5 minutes with them. What advice are you going to give to them?
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I think first of all, I'd say, well, like, what's your goal? Like, what do you want to achieve? And it's like the same thing we ask in finance now, is like, it's all well and good to be like, okay, I'm going to do this X, 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 X. It's like, but if you don't know your goal to start with, like, how can you work back? So if they were going to be a professional cricketer, I'd be like, okay, well, what does that look like? Like, do you want to play for Black Caps? Do you want to, be the best cricketer ever? Because I think, like, the level of goal and ambition and stuff to start with probably would give you a good gauge of the things you need to do, and how you need to live your life to get there. Like, having played cricket with some of those like super Kane Williamsons and stuff, like the guys that are the best of the best, like, to get that good, like, it takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of drive and a lot of all these things that would have to be the starting blocks if that was the goal, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
But in terms of, like, yeah, I don't know, in terms of being a good person, and I would say, like, be authentic, be yourself. Like, if it was corporate or finance or like sports, like, do it your way, like, and don't be afraid to do it your way. Like, don't feel like you have to belittle yourself and become smaller to fit into whatever box because you think that. And I wish had been told that when I was younger, because, I felt like there were times where I felt like I had to be a different person, or, you know,
yeah,
be in the shadows where like that's not really me. Whereas now I'm just like, oh, take it or leave it. Like that's me. Like I'm unapologetically myself, and and if that's not good enough, then that's fine. And and if that's not doesn't align with someone else's values, and that's also fine. Like we're all different. And I think like young people these days, there's just so much pressure to be a certain way, social media and just like even just and high performers, the expectations are so high that it's hard to just be. It's hard to figure out who you are because you're getting pulled in so many directions that it's like to be successful, you need to first figure out your baseline and who you are as a person and who you want to be. And I think like the longer that takes, the more it holds you back from a high performance outcome, right? So like
Yeah.
that takes you 10 years. Well, then all of a sudden you're 30 and then, you might be the lucky one and be Daryl Mitchell and be super successful in in your 30s. But if you could figure that out 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier, then that would be great for your outcome and also yourself as a person, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's the same in finance. It's the same in finance. It's like, you figure out your goal, start early and consistently, you're going to have a really good outcome. It's like simple but effective.
Yeah, that's such good advice, and like that resonated with me a lot when you were talking about that around just being authentic, being yourself, and being comfortable in your own skin, and having enough confidence. Just this is who I am, and if people don't like it, that's cool, man. Like go find someone else. Because when I was a younger leader, I used to think I had to be this thing. It had to look like this, and it had to
Yeah.
sound like this, and
Yeah.
that's fucking exhausting, man, when you're having to wear that mask all the time. And it took me a long time, I think, to get enough confidence in myself. Just be Turks. Like, that's enough. Just be Turks. And not everyone's gonna like it, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But the
Absolutely.
ones that do, you'll make a really positive difference with them.
Yeah. No, mate, absolutely. And yeah, no, I resonate with that. I feel like, yeah, you can talk to those technical competence issues all day. And like in cricket, you can talk for hours about the technical part of the game and stuff. But yeah, like in anything, I think it's, those interpersonal skills and, the ability to be authentic and be yourself and be a good person. Like it might not get you results today or tomorrow, but I think like for me, like my old man always used to say to me, like in the short term, you doing the right thing might not always pay off, and having the right morals and doing it for the right reasons might not pay off in the short term. Like this when I was a young fella. He's like, but if you do that consistently over a long period of time, you'll find that you'll rise to the top as a result. And I think these days, like everyone wants a short, like with social media and, these sound bites and, everything's a click away and it's only a 3-second clip and it's grabbing your attention. It's really hard to differentiate, and really accept and believe that, okay, I can do something, for a long term, do it the right way for the right reasons, and that'll be okay, and that'll be successful. And because everything's just so immediate, and everyone wants that immediate gratification.
Yeah. And with those really short term fixes, they have no longevity. You run out of road really quickly with those hack, quick fix
Yeah,
strategies. Yeah. Or just we live in a world that has no attention. Like people don't have the ability to focus themselves and do deep work for prolonged periods. That's the new coding skill, man. If you can pay attention to something for a prolonged period of time unbroken, you will become a one percenter. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
that's right. Like it's the same as like when we're talking about resilience, like their ability to just keep getting up and just keep going. Like to be like a high performance cricketer over a long period of time, like it takes a lot of that. And it's the same in like life. It's like if you can just, you know, just like what you're saying about doing it for a prolonged period, like if you can show up to something consistently and keep putting in the work, like and that's what my career in cricket has taught me is that like you can keep showing up and every day for 10 years and like you might not be successful at the start but it'll pay off at the back end. Playing getting to play for New Zealand for me was like pinnacle of my career, and like just putting that fern on my chest is just like the most one of the things I'll never it can never be taken away, and I'll never forget it. But that wouldn't have been the case without the 10 years of ups and downs with roller coaster before that.
Yeah, that's an amazing achievement, man, and something most will never ever get to experience. As Napoleon put it, victory belongs to the most persevering. So that's a beautiful, beautiful way to wrap that. Last question for you. We could talk all day. I love to chat as well, so we're a dangerous combo.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was good for the long stints in the field. But look, have you been close to walking away from the game? And if you have, what kept you around? It's the last question I'm going to ask you.
yeah, I have been, mate. Yeah, I have been. The last couple of years have been tough. Like, it's been the first time in my career that I've actually had to take a step back and say, why am I doing this? What are the reasons? Like, can I justify the sacrifice and the effort and time and that I'm putting in? And some of that, a lot of that was to do with family, like having young kids. It just makes you look at things differently, where I'd never had to have those conversations with myself, because I'd always just, my passion for the game and love for the team and for the art of cricket and trying to get better every day, like this, I haven't found, like, I've always wanted to keep pushing and keep, playing. But yeah, no, I had to ask myself those questions, and, is it fair on your family? And, have you still got the motivation to keep pushing? And do you still love the game? And yeah, I suppose, are you still willing to put in the work? All these sort of questions. And I think I think I wasn't as much close to walking away from the game as it was just a bit scary having to confront those questions, because it was a bit
Yeah,
like, oh shit, I've never had to think about these before. And it was took a bit of time to work through, and just really, I came out the other side with all the answers that I would have hoped, in terms of both love for the game and willingness to keep pushing and still want to get better, still want to play for New Zealand. The family thing's probably the hardest. And I think that's more around, are you being selfish? Are you letting them down? Are you missing out on most important years of their life? And then I think, like, some of that is some of that is fair, but some of it, I think, you think that's what people will say, or like that's what people will think about it. Whereas if you actually work it through yourself, back to like what it makes you feel, it's like, well, why are the reasons you're doing it? Like, I'm doing something because I love it, and I'm driven to be, and I'm super good at it. And like, the lessons that around perseverance and resilience and high performance and all that, they're lessons I want my kids to learn. They're lessons that I want them to see. And yeah, like, I might be away a little bit, but if I'm working 9 to 5, you're away all day anyway, right? Like, you're not sitting at home with your kids when you're at work. So it's like, I don't know, the way I just, like, not justify it, but the way I look at it is like, you know, they're going to get all these cool experiences from getting to come watch dad play cricket and travel around the country. And, my oldest boy, he came over to Europe when I first debuted for the Black Caps when he was 6 months old. Like that's pretty
so
cool.
good.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, you can look at it like, is it fair, blah, blah, blah. But I think if you flip it on its head and say, well, what are the positives? Like, there's heaps of positives. And it's cool that their kids are, my kids are getting to see me do something I love and chase a dream and work really hard at it. And hopefully that, teaches them some good lessons, because that's what I want them to do.
Totally. Like, it's a walking, talking example of your dad going after his dreams, right? And what it looks like and what it takes. Like, what an amazing lesson to teach your kids.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate that.
Good. What a great place to finish. But hey, man, it's been awesome catching up with you again. And where can people find you? Where can they check out what you're up to?
That's a great question. I'm not known for my social media prowess, but yeah, I think I've got Instagram and Facebook, and that's about it.
And keep an eye on the media.
Yeah, I'm usually hanging out in there, hopefully for good reasons.
Of course. All good, man. Hey, well, yeah, I've loved the chat, and it's really good to see you again.
Thanks for having me on, mate. I'm absolutely loving the content, and I think, what you're putting out there is super valuable. And, I know I'll be following your journey, and I hope it all goes well. And it's been good to catch up.
Yeah, likewise, brother. Cool. Thanks, guys. That's us for today. But if you enjoyed it, you can check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz, or you can find us on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And thanks again to our mates at Dark Horse Coffee. We really appreciate your support. Catch you later.